Three, two, one. Cambridge Insider Podcast time. Hello, everybody. Awesome to have all of our listeners with us. Remember to like, subscribe, and share, post comments, email questions, do all of those good things. It's always good to have our listeners. You're the reason why we publish this every single week. Miss Leanna Glass, how are you?
I'm doing great. We've been having great weather in Philadelphia. It's almost feeling like summer, actually. So I'm great over here. How are you doing?
Also good. A very sneaky little reference to the weather. A certain previous co-host and I used to often go on and on about the weather. So, the fact that you slid that in there, very, very sneaky, very impressive as well. But I do agree, the weather in the Northeast is spectacular. If you have to sit through a winter, anywhere on sort of the East Coast, specifically this Northeast, by the time spring rolls around, you're really, really happy for what the weather brings.
I feel like right now with small talk, it's either the weather or what vaccination did you get?
Exactly. It's good. It's good. Sometimes it's both. Some good news, some really, really good news for the industry that just broke this week, referencing to the week that we're recording, which will be last week when you listen to this on Monday. But Leanna, don't you want to just fill our listeners in for anybody who maybe hasn't heard exactly what's broken?
Yeah, so we have really exciting news for F1 travelers. So basically, I'm going to kind of give a broad overview here, but on April 26th, which was this past Monday, the Secretary of State made a national interest determination regarding categories of travelers eligible for exceptions related to the spread of COVID-19. So this is news we've been waiting for a long time. Students may now qualify for a national interest exception, and NIE. So students in China, Iran, Brazil, or South Africa may qualify for an NIE only if their academic programs begin August 1st, 2021 or later. So this pertains to our programs. It's great news. Stephen, what are your initial reactions here hearing this?
I mean, this is huge. This is one of the things that we were hoping was going to happen. Probably we were a little naive in thinking that it would happen immediately. I think there are often factors outside of our interest levels, I suppose, geopolitical factors that we don't always want to consider. But this is really speaking to the travel ban and the fact that specifically from Southeast Asia, many of our Chinese students who were stranded back in China, weren't able to join us for in-person classes. Should those, and it looks at this stage, should those, as if they are going to start in the fall, those in-person classes, and for a long while those students didn't have an option to come. Now under the new NIE, national interest exemption, students from China specifically are able to get to the country. So this is huge. This is as big a news as the rollout of the vaccine. This is as big a news as some of the visa consulates opening up, although we're still, and I know we're going to address that, but this is really one of the obstacles that we were hoping would fall away, and this is certainly a light at the end of the tunnel.
Certainly, we are on the right path here. This is a huge step. So getting into more details here, students with a valid F1 visa intending to begin or continue an academic program commencing August 1st or later, they don't need to seek or they don't need to contact an embassy or consulate to seek an individual NIE to travel. So they may enter the US no earlier than 30 days before the start of their academic studies. But this is great news because if you have an existing F1 visa, you don't need to schedule another appointment. You will just automatically be considered for this NIE.
Absolutely. And that just, sorry to interrupt, but that's, again, we talk about recruitment, we talk about managing your intake of students really in two groups, your re-enrolling students and your new students. And for re-enrolling students, which for many schools is a significant number of students that make up their program. You're now able to get your re-enrolling students who have had visas either from a previous year or simply were able to apply for visas, get them, and then maybe didn't come because of the start of the pandemic. those students, as long as they have that F1 visa, as Leanna mentioned, are now able to get into the country. So again, huge news. We're getting back, we're fighting back. I love it.
Right. That direct travel will really eliminate a lot of challenges that our students saw this year with having to stop in other countries to quarantine. And, they won't have to deal with any of that come the fall, come August 1st. So moving on here. So students seeking to apply for new F1 visas should check the status of visa services at their embassy or consulate. And those applicants who are found to be qualified for an F1 visa will automatically be considered for an NIE. So this brings us to sort of, we have some great news this week, but we're going to be seeing another challenge, which is a backlog of visa appointments at consulates. So, throughout this, students have been trying to make appointments, and we're going to continue to see a backlog here. So hurdles still remain, and worldwide, only about 40% of US consulates are routinely scheduling appointments right now for visa interviews. And in China and India, the two top sending countries, consular services are closed or operating on an emergency basis. And all this information will be linked in our show notes. But as visa processing resumes, there's going to be a huge backlog of applicants, including 2 classes of international students now, as well as other travelers. So I kind of want to go into here, Stephen, how should schools react to this? What can they be doing to sort of combat the challenges we're going to see with these backlogged appointments?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. We certainly aren't there yet. We certainly do have a couple of obstacles, and visa scheduling will be the next big one that we need to overcome. From the school's perspective, I think it's all about staying on top of news, understanding where visa scheduling is, what the availability is, communicating with your students as to those options. Specifically, I think at this stage, for either new students or returning students that don't have an F1 visa, so potentially then returning students who were never in person, who simply just did online for a year, offering them an option to stay online or remote for as long as it requires them to be able to get that visa. Now, we don't know the exact date of when visa scheduling is going to be exactly up and running. Our reports and our news and our data coming out of China is that, yes, some embassies are starting to open up. People are starting to be able to get visa scheduling, but as Leanna mentioned, there's a backlog. How quickly that backlog disappears, which of the categories gets maybe preference over others, those are all internal processes that we don't quite know yet. So in my advice to schools is offer your students right now at this juncture, specifically those kids still looking to get that visa, offer them that option to stay online. Because if you don't offer that option, you might lose those students. And again, it could be that they can remain online for, a couple of months, and maybe, October, November, December, be able to get a visa and then hopefully come in person, whether that be in the middle of a semester, if you're able to allow that in your academic program, or whether that be at the start of the spring semester, then just as a way to transition them in, halfway through the school year. That's really up for debate, and every school will have a different perspective and different regulations around that. But I think it's about offering them that opportunity. I know many schools are grappling with the idea of, do I offer online even though it's a drain on my resources? Understand that even if you decide not to offer online, there are other online options where a student can take. As an example, our SMOA, our St. Mary's Online Academy option that we offer through Cambridge Network, is a really, really good option for schools that want to move away from the online remote offering, but still want to retain those students. Work with Cambridge Network to offer that SMOA program potentially to the spring, and then get those students to transition to in-person, hopefully once they have a visa. So this is great news, obviously, but as Leanna rightfully mentioned, the obstacles with regards to visas is still one that's ongoing.
Right. And I want to mention that, the online options regarding visas. So on Monday, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security did say it would be extending the pandemic guidance to give international students flexibility to study online for the 2021-2022 school year. So in offering your students online options, you don't need to worry about whether their visas will still be, eligible. They're covered through next school year as well. Students can be online. So definitely don't miss out on that enrollment for students who just might need a bit of a grace period. They might not be able to make it for September, but they might be able to be here in November. So definitely important to look at all those options, create a plan B for sure.
Absolutely. And that it's so important that regulation is still in place, offering the students that grace period, if you will, and offering the schools the opportunity, again, to retain those relationships. We work so hard as a school and as Cambridge Network to forge these relationships with students. This is our ability to maintain those and hopefully have these kids in person and being able to realize their American dream. This is something that for many kids, this is, 10, 15 years in the making. This is huge investment and thought and resources from a family and the student side that has gone into this. I think, we as a school, as agency, we deserve it because we've put a lot of hard work in it, but more so, the families deserve it. And it is really, really positive to see the administration put in place rules and regulations that allow for this industry, which is a massive $42 billion a year industry, to flourish. And that's what we're seeing. And that's promising. That's promising from the industry side. It allows us to plan a little bit as a school, as an agency, to plan ahead. And we're thankful that the administration is putting some of these things in place and allowing students to come, but also allowing them that grace period. So that's good news.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, I'm hearing it from schools, I'm hearing it from students, from people we work with too. Pandemic fatigue, quarantine fatigue, all of it is real. But I think if we can just push through this last phase here, it'll be the most important phase to push through, and you will come out stronger and on top if you can provide your students these excellent services and options for these next 6 months or however long it's going to be for students to be able to get back in person. And as Stephen said, Cambridge Network has some amazing services to offer. If you are leaning towards, we can't continue to offer our online services, we don't have the resources at our school, let us take on some of that work. We're here for you. And, we have the services to support students who might not be able to make it here for September.
Absolutely. Well said. Leanna, you have been the bearer of good news in this episode. You get to carry that mantle until such a time that I research and bring something to the podcast. You will carry that title of the bearer of good news. But I am going to say the following. Any final thoughts from your side?
So, yeah, I think I kind of did just say my final thoughts, like really just push through these last hurdles with the visa appointments, give your students options. If you can do that, you're going to come out as one of the strongest international programs in our country, I would assume, if you can make it through this and continue to give your students that excellent care even through these last challenges we're going to face. And Cambridge Network is here for any of your needs. So feel free to reach out and we're happy to help.
Absolutely. To all of the school partners specifically, if you've listened or if you've read this communication from the administration and there's something that's unclear to you, feel free to reach out. Your program managers, your student development managers, your SSAs, everybody's here to support you and make sure that you not only understand the policies that are being passed, what that means for your program, but able to communicate what that means and how that plays into your program to your students as well. To all of our listeners, as always, we are here because you allow us to be here. Thank you so much. Like, listen, subscribe, do all those good things. Enjoy. Spring is upon us in the US and across across a lot of the world, specifically the world that, we work with in this industry. Southeast Asia is seeing a similar change of season. So enjoy that, everybody. We'll catch you around the next episode of the Cambridge Insider Podcast. Bye-bye, everybody.